All right, so we're in the home stretch. You made it past the marathon video. There's a lot of complexity there, and obviously you can spend some time kind of digging in as much as you want, but we covered the basics in Flex in a relatively short amount of time in context to what we're building. But so this one should be a little easier, but you are going to be spending time by yourself trying to build out the second page. And like I said, I'm going to get you started, but we're going to take everything that you've kind of done to this point in module 1 and module 2 up to this point and build out another page called work. And we've already linked it, but we're going to build out this page. So this is something that you'll work on. Now it starts with actual having images for your portfolio. And this is something that you need to think about a little bit in terms of what you want the thumbnails to be. Now you'll need to pick out 4 pieces that you've worked on, and obviously you can use things from this class to kind of use as your thumbnails. But you want to think about like what makes a good thumbnail? What would kind of give a person an idea of what they're going to be clicking on? So this is stuff that I've worked on or you've worked on, but you know, you have your typography assignment. I've done some work with VR. I did some logo designs for a coffee company in Iowa. And then it's another VR project, but it has kind of a cartoony look. So all of these kind of give a little bit of indication of what somebody would get if they clicked on it. Now we're not going to go any further than just this page, but you do need to give some thought of like what makes a good thumbnail for 4 different projects. Technically how you do this, we're going to use Photoshop, and I'm not going to like spend a ton of time on Photoshop, but other than you can open up an image and crop it. So I'm going to open up an image that I have on my documents. And so this is the image I want to use. Now, it has 2 of us in it, but I don't know. This is a colleague of mine here that I don't have his permission to use his image on my website, and I don't want to, you know, step on anybody's toes. So my design that I've been kind of working with is going to be a square. Now you can make it any shape you want, but I'm going to crop him out so that way I don't get in any trouble with permissions. And I'm going to hold Shift when I'm using the crop tool. Now, before I go any further, there's a crop tool, that's the 5th one down. And when I do that, I can just drag a box. I'm going to hold Shift to make it square. So I'm going to include a little bit of the project I'm working on in the background. I'm going to include my hands so that way it shows the joysticks we're using. And then once I got it cropped the way I want it to, I'm going to hit return. Okay. Now I need to save it as a JPEG or a PNG, and that's important. Those are the 2 file types for images, and we talk more about optimization in module 3. But we're going to save as a JPEG, and we need to save it inside of our web folder we've been working on. So mine's on my Box account, the Viscom modules, 131, the web, and inside of images. Now I've already done this for 3 others, so you need to do this for 4 different ones. I'm going to just make sure I name it the same, and I start it with portfolio just so I can find it easier. And I'm going to name it portfolio_vr.jpg. When we do that, I'm just going to leave this settings. You can change the quality, but again, we talk more about optimization in the next module. But we hit OK, and that's Photoshop. There is a Photoshop workshop that I'd highly recommend that goes into more detail. And what you could do with this is really pay attention to the portfolio that you're building. And a lot of times I recommend students thinking about their projects and putting them into context. So in this case, this is a poster design, and you could easily just have, you know, a poster design like this. But when you put it in context, you get something that looks like and tells people what they're actually looking at without like spelling out poster design underneath, right? Or you could have something that looks like this that shows a series of posters, or, you know, identity work, another types of poster kind of mock-ups that you kind of look at. However you want to do that, but that's where you can really mix in your photography skills, your design skills, and actually show people the things that you've worked on in context, is what I like to say. Okay, so anyway, we got images there, we got them going, we got all of our thumbnails thought about and designed the way we want and cropped the way we want. And we got them all saved inside of our images folder. Okay. Now, if you don't see them show up, make sure you hit refresh the file tree, and then they should show up there. Now again, I named them all portfolio underscore whatever the project was. No spaces, no capital letters or special characters, but you can find these easier that way. Okay. So here's where I'm going to kind of like get you started, but then you're going to be building out the rest of it. Okay. So we have our HTML file, right? And we have our CSS file on the left side or on the right side. The CSS document is going to be the same for both pages. So you can change the CSS, but what you're going to be doing is instead of homepage layout, we're going to create a section called work layout. Okay. So this allows us to kind of do the styles that we need to do. And you may not need to do very many, okay? But what we're going to end up doing is put the styles there, okay? Now, with the HTML, when we go on the HTML side, what we're going to be doing, and make sure you have everything the way you want it on the HTML, because that's the part we're going to make a copy of, okay? So when we save a copy, we're going to save as under File, and we're going to change the name to work.html. Okay. So when we've done that, we end up having two HTML files, right? And when we did save as, you'll notice that this changed to work. Now if we double click on index, you notice that we can put both of them up there, and right now they're the exact same. So that's a good thing, but we need to do a couple things here before we get started. So we want to make sure index is the way we want it, and then under work, and really make sure you're on the work.html before you do this. So with the work page, what we can do is we're going to remove the content from the home page and make some space for content for our portfolio page. Now, the way we're going to do this is we're going to remove the aside, right? So just delete that. And then we are going to remove the H2, so essentially the text, and we're going to keep the article, okay? So we're going to go all the way down to the paragraph that closes for our hobbies. And what that leaves us is our comment from the main content area, so we can still find that pretty easily. And inside the article is where we can work with our portfolio thumbnails and include them into this HTML. Now the last thing we need to do in the HTML is change home to work, right? So this main class, we have work, and then we have this article. And so what that allows us to do is allows us to have a style section for our home page, and then we can do the same thing for our work layout, okay? So we can do the same kind of stuff. So home, div, and have our styles for that based on how you want to do it. And then we have home, article, and do the same thing, and we can style it the way we want it to, right? Now, hint here, you don't need to do a ton of styling, and you don't need to do a ton of work with your HTML. Just get your images inside the HTML, and then work on the style to make it look like what you want. So work through that, and you should be good. And then when you're done with that, you want to make sure to preview it to actually see what this will look like when you are ready to move to the next step. Our work page just has that, right? There's not much to look at. But when we click on our name, it goes to our text. When we click on work, it goes to our work page. Okay? So you'll need to build out this page to look something to the effect of this. Obviously, it's going to be your own images. You can change the shape and the size to make it look however you kind of want, and whatever you think would look best for a portfolio page, right? So things to keep in mind moving forward. We have our second page. You're just at this point working on that page. Design it how you want to, but imagine how you would showcase those 4 projects with your thumbnails. Use the HTML to show images. you need to have 4 separate images here. You can't just like create one big one the way you want it. It's got to be 4 separate images. Be sure to include alt attributes for all images, and we talked about that in module 1, but you can see our image on the home page, what it looks like. And then think about possibilities of how you might make this look your own with CSS. You could have borders to all the images, add space that looks different than this as much as you want. You could use flex to control the layout and order as much as you want. And then be sure to like save it and test it and kind of flip back and forth like, oh, okay, that looks cool. Or, you know, I need more space, or maybe I need to lessen this space. Or maybe I want them all next to each other, you know, like right up against each other, right? So there's lots of ways to kind of approach this, but make it your own and make it look how you think you want it to look like. And try out some new skills with your CSS. The last video, and I promise it's the last video for this module, is the uploading and validation, right? So it's the last step. We've done that before, but there's a couple things to mention.